Every year, the fitness, nutrition, and wellness space is dominated by a new trend. Today on the pod, Nathan and I are going to be going through the trends of 2025, what we think is going to be here to stay, and what we think is going to be coming in 2026. So, Nathan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jake. I'm very excited to be here. And first, I just wanted to say thank you to all our new listeners that come across from my chat with Glenn at the start of the year on all things mapping out your health and wealth in 2026. Excited to have you here. More than happy to get some feedback as well and some topics to talk on. So you can find us on Instagram, which is Nathan Mandino. And then what's yours, Jake?
Jacob Hodson, but at Newstrength HQ is probably your best bet to get in touch with us as well. So let's get straight into it. Obviously, we've been around for a long time now in the fitness and nutrition space. We're both getting old. What are we this year? 33?
Yeah, 33.
Oh, geez. You'll probably be 33 by the time this drops, actually. Oh, close. I think it'll be a couple of days either way. So the old man over here is going to be giving his wisdom. And let's get straight into it. I've got 5 topics here, and we're going to riff on this, on why we think it hit, why it's been popular, maybe some of our individual opinions, whether the people like it or not on the pieces, and then also what we think is coming in 2026. So, Nathan, I'm going to hit you first up with Pilates.
Yes.
Pilates is hot right now.
Pilates is trending. Most certainly.
I feel like it's taken what yoga was 10 years ago, sort of thing. It's kind of that same market there, but it's also pulled from this like heavy like CrossFit high intensity background that there was sort of between that 2013 to 2020, and then through that stage, I feel like there's a lot of the talk of burnout and those sort of things, and then that's like we've trended towards like a lower intensity, not necessarily easy, but like a lower intensity exercise modalities. And that's where things like Pilates have really come into fruition of being a popular thing. And I actually did a bit of deep diving on like Google Trends today, so I'll be touching on a few of these there. I didn't want to come in blind or completely blind. I left Nate, for the listeners at home, I left Nate completely blind on this. I gave him a notice of what the topics were about.
This is where I thrive, though,
half an hour ago. But I did a little bit of researching this morning, and pretty much from about 2022, it's been on just a steady rise in the popularity of Pilates, but really like 2025, it kicked off and really took off in that space. Obviously, there's been a lot of increase in like the franchising around Pilates has also come about. But what do you think it is about Pilates? Like, why is it kicked off now?
I think there's a lot of reasons, Jake, but I think it's accessible. It seems as though it is. It can be appropriate at any level depending on what classes and what you're looking to do. So I think it makes from the consumer, it seems like it's doable, it's achievable, and it's an easy entry into fitness where like throwing a barbell around can be intimidating. And I think for the target market of those people that are moving to Pilates, because some people do utilize it as a complementary thing and they still do their strength training. So it isn't necessarily this or that, but I think it's opened a really lovely door for people to get introduced to training that may not have came straight into the fitness space where it was barbells, dumbbells, running, HYROXs, CrossFit, whatever is trending at the time beforehand. So I think it's been an easier entry, less barriers, and just seems more achievable for the quote-unquote like average consumer.
It's also like they're generally a nice feel. Like when you walk into a Pilates studio, they're generally done up nicely. Like the people that have the perception around gyms are like dirty, grimy, that sort of look, like full of sweaty men. It's kind of the opposite in that way there. Like most of these places are decked out, like the whole place is as nice as like your brand new bathroom sort of vibe to it. So I think that's a nice little touch that does make it like it's a more inviting place for a lot of people to go to, because it's not like walking into like rusty barbells and so on, and then the commercial gyms that kind of after so long just smell like sweat. Not to say that Pilates places you're not going to get sweaty, I'm sure you will, but it's definitely a different vibe there.
Yeah. So we chatting, do we think it's sticking around?
What do you think's the future of it?
I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think it'll continue on this upward trend. I think what will happen is it'll be this entryway, and I think people will eventually, it'll get them from point A to B, and then some people want to venture out and do more. So whether that's looking at things like strength and conditioning, or it could be CrossFit, or it could just be something else that they want to do, I think it'll naturally have that consumer, like that density of the population disperse out into other things because it'll only serve the novelty for so long. But I do think it'll stay for that reason that new people come in, they'll find it there, they'll have their journey, then they'll venture out. Some people, it'll just stay as their thing. But I think what my prediction is, Jake, it'll become more complementary, and that might like trigger a few people or ruffle a few feathers. But I think for women in particular, and obviously men do Pilates too, and that's awesome. With the target market being predominantly women, and with where the research is leading and what we're seeing, it's only going to serve enough resistance to get adaptations that they're looking for their bone health and to reduce their osteoporosis and those things. Like, it's going to be better than doing nothing, but there's probably not enough loading.
Yeah.
From what I can see anyway. So I think it'll be there, it'll stay there. I think it's great, but I also think it'll become, for a lot of people, something they do adjacent to something else like strength training.
Yeah, I think like touching on that, and you're getting towards kind of one of my big predictions in maybe I actually reckon it might not be 2026, it might be 2027 when it comes along. Generally what we find is the information that we're getting now, like when we're deep diving, because we're around like the front line of fitness and health and wellness and that sort of thing. The stuff that we're getting now is kind of gets filtered into the market in probably like 1 to 2 years' time. Like when we first started with Newstrength, it was like we were pushing towards like structured, periodized strength and conditioning training that was complementary.
I wish we pushed harder on that actually.
And yeah, like
verbalized it more, I should say.
From 2017 through to like then you started to see the rise of the Fit Stops, the yards, the franchises are really trying to push it. That's their angle now. They started like 2020, 2021, like ish in that range there. And what we've typically found in that, like even HYROX, which is going to be one of our big things, like we were sort of starting to be aware of it probably 2.5 years ago. And then it's really kicked off in this year. And we'll get to that in a second. But typically we start to see that. And I think what the evidence is starting to show, particularly around women in that like perimenopause stage, is that strength training is going to be the biggest, most impactful thing that you can do with your time and energy and effort, so that you're setting yourself up for success in your later years, but also just being healthy and getting and having energy, strength all the way through for getting the most out of it right now, but also setting yourself up as you age as well. So, and that is one of the things that the girls in our team are working on, putting together a workshop for our women's wellness. They ran it last year, it was really successful. They're going to be bringing that back again this year. A couple of guest speakers alongside it there. That if you guys are interested in that, just shoot us a message on Instagram at Newstrength HQ, and we'll send you through all the details on that one there.
Yeah, I highly just wanted to highlight that, Jake. I strongly recommend it. Like everyone that came to it last year couldn't speak more highly about it and just been raving for the next one. So if you want to learn about training, strength training, managing perimenopause, menopause, and all those transitions, and not from two blokes speaking on a podcast, and actual professionals and guest speakers in-house that own that space, would love to see you there.
Yeah, so I do think that what we are going to see, as you said, in the Pilates spaces, I think we're going to see a trend back towards strength training from the people that are looking for it. Like, I think the perception, the attraction, or part of the attraction towards Pilates was that the strength training world at the time was really pushing the high intensity. It was the CrossFits, it was the off the side, like it was F45 at the same time. Like that was not really in the strength training world, but it was like that was the community fitness space. It was like high intensity. I think the bounce back to Pilates was like, oh, this is better for me to avoid burnout and manage my life outside of fitness. And I think there is a balance.
Less injury is another one.
Yeah, which was an intensity issue. I don't think it was the strength issue itself. So I do think we're going to come back in that way there. I do think Pilates is here to stay. Like the thing when you do look at the trends and the searches of Pilates over the last nearly 20 years, is it has been steady the whole time, but there's been a spike again. So it wasn't like some of these other things were like irrelevant for a long time and then just had a huge spike. Like this has been one that's been around for 20 years. It's going to be around for another 20 years or more. But I think we're going to have a rise and we'll probably have a little bit of a dip and flatten out from there. I don't think it's disappearing. I think we're going to see it as a consistency. It's just going to probably have its time in the sun and then pull its way back into probably a stronger position in the market than what it was 5 years ago. But it will continue its way along there. So Pilates, tick of approval. It's here to stay. It's not. I do think it'll keep on rising for the next 12 months or so, and then I think we'll have that sort of flat spot for it there where it doesn't really fade, but it just hangs on.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's dive into the next hot topic, HYROX. Like, what is HYROX to start off with? And we are going to touch on an episode with this completely, but just for the people, the listeners that may be not aware of it, what's HYROX?
Isn't it something about being a hybrid rock star?
Yeah, it's actually the worst part of it. If you actually look into the name of it, I was quite disappointed. Like,
is it a translation or is that just what it is?
I don't know. So it originated in Germany, which I was like, oh yeah, cool. It's probably like a loosely spun together German word put around it there, and then it sort of started coming out. It was like short for hybrid rock star, and everyone who was like starting to get interested in it just put their head down for a second. I was like, why am I associated with this?
I'm gonna have to assume that it's like the language has been lost in between,
lost in translation
like
a little bit.
I don't think that's been the
Nobody's disputed it though. That's my that's the thing that I like. HYROX themselves haven't come out and been like, oh no, you guys are getting this wrong. They've just sort of not said a word. So that makes me think that that's what it was.
Regardless, so essentially what it is, it's it's not sport. It's an event that you can go through as like a hybrid athlete. So we're looking
They are trying to get to Olympics, actually.
There you go. They might do what CrossFit never got to do. So with that, essentially there's some running, there's some strength components.
Loosely strength components.
Yeah,
It's mostly running, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's mostly running. But I think the easiest way for someone to actually grasp what it is to probably have a quick look on YouTube or something where you can visualize it.
Yeah.
But what it has done, it has created another big sense of community in fitness that CrossFit once had and lost. And now it's kind of, I guess, revived it. And I have my theories on why and the timing and a few things like that, but I'm sure we're about to jump into that and chat all things HYROX.
Yeah, and so we'll kind of generally catch this as like HYROX, and then also like the hybrid training revolution that's kind of come alongside that as well.
Same umbrella.
Which HYROX is kind of probably drove that, but at the same time you've got guys like Nick Bear and that are sort of in the range where they're doing bodybuilding, they're doing running as well, they're running marathons, ultras, and so on. And this kind of, I guess, the idea is a well-rounded athlete, somebody who's strong, athletic, but also has endurance and capacity there. Yeah. And this has also been something it's been around for a while now. It's just been put into a nice bundle to where there's now events that are based on it there. Like I remember when we were younger, it was like the 500-pound deadlift and 5-minute miles. Like who's capable of doing both of those things is probably the elite of well-rounded fitness. And I don't know that many people capable. Like after running a mile a few times, 5 minutes is real damn fast.
I'm pretty sure it's like 3:07 split time you hold.
Yeah, the 500-pound deadlift, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. That's not that hard.
See, I'm more confident in getting the mile than I am the deadlift.
Yeah, and this puts it into the piece of the epitome, like where it is a challenge in that way there. And I do think it's evolved a little bit, like where it has shifted towards maybe not necessarily those peak numbers as much. Like you're seeing a lot of people run longer, and you're seeing a lot of it's not necessarily about the weight on the lifts, but also just sort of looking like you lift, not looking like a runner, looking like somebody who's strong as well as being able to run as well.
Yeah, I think it also just created a lot of friction with self-limiting beliefs. Like there was so much of a big part of the population that wasn't so much athletic, and they thought if you'd done any conditioning components, you'd lose all your muscle, or if you ran, then you'd be skinny, and you couldn't do that. And there's like these things that I guess were little echo chambers within their modalities of fitness, and then it was like you can do this and do this and do this and do this. You just have to structure it in a particular way, or you just need to put down the self-limiting beliefs. So I think a lot of it taking off was having some of those key influential people, like you said, like Nick Bear, whereas like you can run far and lift heavy is his thing. And I think that attracted a lot of people because you have multiple modalities that you can do, and it's quite engaging. Like you can have your fitness where you're in the gym, you're lifting weights, but then you're also having a swim in a pool trying to get your time down there, and you're doing trail runs where it's this lifestyle component. I think that's what hybrid pushes to. It eliminates a lot of those, I guess, limiting narratives and those false beliefs of what fitness has to be. But then also it brings into this, fitness like this really cool lifestyle component where I'm running and lifting,
out of the
I feel
dungeon
good.
that's the gym.
Yeah, exactly. Where that still has its place, and you know that more than anyone.
But,
like me lifting in the dark at 4 o'clock, like I do love that, but I also love the sun coming up over the lake on our Sunday run. I think it's been cool to have those components.
I do think just adding alongside that too, I think there's like when you think about it, like most of us didn't get into the gym because we wanted to look like the bodybuilders or the powerlifters or weightlifting, strongman, whatever it might be. A lot of us got into the gym, like the person who you kind of like idolized or wanted to look like was like the footy player that you idolized or things like that when you're getting into it. Like a lot of us was like looking at like the sportsman. That was like they're fit, they're strong. And then I was like, oh, how do I get like that? Well, I better go and just do 5 days a week in the gym, and completely forgot that thing that was like, oh, when you got into it, like, and that was me when I got into training. It was like I started training in lifting all the time, and I didn't do that much. Well, I was still playing footy, so that was like, I'm still running at footy. Then when I stopped playing footy, I kind of just stopped conditioning at all. And I think there's that layer there of like where it's kind of coming back to like what a lot of guys got into the gym in the first place. Like they wanted that package of like being able to do it all, and then when you take away from that sport, like you're not playing in those sports anymore, it's hard to just go out and do the shuttle runs by yourself, but it's kind of given a realm or like a lane where it's like, oh, this is how you do this together. Because a lot of people didn't really, it was like, all right, if you went and learnt about bodybuilding stuff, none of them were doing running as well. Yeah. So they were all just running, they were all just doing bodybuilding, and then they were just then waiting, and it's like, oh, well, how do I add in the running side of it, or how do I add in my fitness? It's like, just do 30 minutes on the treadmill at a low intensity. I was like, it kind of took away from what you were wanting out of that there. And I think this hybrid lane has just given that gap really nice. It, I think, was filled by CrossFit and stuff in the past. Obviously, they've kind of been on the trends-wise, a slow downward trajectory since like 2013, which I think that's in itself is probably where the point where I was like, it become unachievable. That up until that around 2013, maybe 2014 mark, like a guy like you right now would probably make regionals in the CrossFit world. Back then, would you get there now? Probably not. Maybe if you dialed in and you committed
strict muscle ups instead of kipping, that's my only chance.
Yeah, like in terms of like general outputs and stuff like that, like I think in how fit you are right now and like strength wise, I know you're probably not quite as strong as what you were when you were like clean and jerking 135 or so. Like those numbers would have got you there. The conditioning outputs and stuff like that would have got you into that world. And then kind of after that point, then it was like people are doing 180 kilo clean and jerks and they're snatching 140, and then at the same time are doing a run 16-minute 5Ks or whatever it is, and you're just like, oh, that's not achievable anymore. And I think that's where like CrossFit kind of had its fall off, where I was like, oh, I'm going to have to commit my life to this to be any good at it. Versus beforehand, it was like you saw guys like, oh yeah, I'm a firefighter in my day job, and then I go and compete at the games. And now I think you're seeing this like layer in the hybrid athlete scene, the HYROX scene of like you've got these guys with day jobs. Like their day jobs might be personal trainers or like us, but they're the ones that are then performing well. And I think there will be a point in the future where those guys get out of reach as well, and then you start going, oh, I'd have to commit all my life to being able to train like this to get to doing that. But I don't think we've found that point yet.
Yeah, I agree with CrossFit. I think it's probably quite multifaceted too. I think it has a big impact on its downward trajectory and its trend, as you said. And I think it's CrossFit as a whole. I think there's probably been a lot of people that kind of chewed up and spat out as well. And I think that leads to some of the success that HYROX has seen. In my personal opinion.
At least in their range, it's like a zone 2 runner's standard. Like there is a recovery day built in, like into sort of the training model. It's not high intensity all the time. So I do think that's a point that you make there, is like where there is a balance of the intensity zones through the week versus CrossFit was typically like, besides the guys who were the best of the best, like they were doing it because they understood training and periodization and those things and what it took to get to the elite. But then everyone else trying to catch up was like, I got to do more hard stuff.
Yeah, I think that too. I think you have to be quite able to do CrossFit. Like I think with HYROX as well, you don't have to be as able. So again, it's an assumption. It's not facts. But I think with CrossFit and following it and pursuing it, I think we had a large uptake. And you'd know if you had a shoulder injury, there's no way you can do CrossFit. Like until you rehabbed it or whatever it may be. But I think that would spit a lot of people out and they never took it up. I think what CrossFit done was created a really great fitness community and showed people they could do hard things and achieve a lot. But I think the cool thing about HYROX and its timing is as it's come around and built, like it's come up as CrossFit's gone down essentially, and they've met through there. I think it allows people to
2021, the peak of the was where HYROX and stuff like started to trend towards worldwide. Australia was a little bit later to it. Like 2023 is where we started to sort of have that kick, which is like when you started to see like Sydney and stuff. Oh, I think they've had the first one in Melbourne at the end of 2023. And then they've started to track their way through. They had Sydney in 2024. That was my first one there that I went down with Paul, and then they've sort of rose through. And they have this really good model where it's like you can see in there like the searches for it is it's all built around the frequency of races.
Yeah.
And each one tends to be higher and higher, with the exception of like last year, like the Perth. Obviously, West Coast of Australia is kind of isolated from the East Coast, that it wasn't nearly the same amount. Like it was kind of like Brisbane got a little bit bigger, and then Sydney got bigger. Perth was a little bit smaller, but Melbourne was huge last year in the range of it there. And I can only expect to see like Brisbane, Sydney, and so on this year is just going to go more and more.
Yeah, I think it's so achievable too. Like how the race, if that's what you're going to call it, is laid out. Like there's nothing overly complex, and the skill set isn't that high. Like whilst yes, if you're a hybrid athlete listening to this, there is skill components in there, but you don't have to be great just to do it and complete it. Where I think CrossFit as well, it had, whilst it was attractive to some, like still barbell cycling, snatches and things like that can be hard to get your head around. So I think the cool thing that it's done, it's made fitness, racing and this community aspect and being able to achieve something quite accessible for the general public. And whilst hybrid training is quite popularised and it looks quite glamorous, I think it's also HYROX is allowing the general public and just your everyday person, mums and dads or whoever it may be, to have a step into a fitness race. And they don't know how to, like, they don't need to know how to cycle a barbell, and they don't need to know how to do these high skill things. They can just show up with a good attitude and just be happy to suffer for a bit and then get to the end, and that builds belief. I think that's why, in my opinion, you see it just compounding on itself, because they just want to do a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And because it is consistent, because we've spoken about this before where you said it's the exact same thing every time, but the consistency is what makes the measurable so valuable. So with CrossFit, obviously a high variety, and it could be anything, same with strongman, like each event's different. I think the simplicity and it being the same thing over and over again is actually attractive for people because they have a measurement there that they can go off.
Yeah.
Will it last forever? Don't know. Probably not. But right now, I don't think it's going to go anywhere for at least the next 5 years.
Yeah, I reckon I'm going to say 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, just based on the same trajectory as CrossFit. CrossFit really had that rise from like 2010. It started hitting. 2013 was the start of the trickle.
Yeah.
I'm going to say probably around the same thing. I reckon we're at that start, like we're maybe at the start of where it's hitting now, and like the span on it's actually been quite big, like relative to CrossFit's peak and relative to the time frame that HYROX is into its own phase now. Like it's probably going to be bigger. It will be interesting to see how they balance out. Like you start to see these little fractions coming out. Like there's obviously Paladin up in Brisbane. Like they went from like their first event started last year was like 800 people. Might have been less than that. And then they had one in November or December just gone that was like 5,000 or something like that.
Right.
Don't quote me on the numbers.
I haven't looked at it much,
It's fairly big, like where you're starting to see these other players coming in, not trying to be, they're not trying to be HYROX, but they're just trying to support the journey of it. Because obviously HYROX, like in Australia, they're not going to they might get to 2 in a major city a year. And it's obviously a very expensive event to run. But I don't see them being able to get to where like they're going to be able to run one a month in sort of across Australia, and then the traveling and that sort of stuff. Like people obviously making holidays out of it and doing weekends around it, or they go, I'll fly to Melbourne for the weekend, I'll do a race and I'll go and hang out and explore a little bit. But I don't think if they have you can kind of do one at any point, will it continue to have that traction? So that being said though, America's like that at the moment. So America does seem to have there's nearly a CrossFit event every couple of weeks, a HYROX event every couple of weeks.
I was about to say, is it on the upward trend?
HYROX event every couple of weeks, and you can kind of travel around and nearly catch one whenever, but the population density in America is obviously, there's a lot more people to then capture in that way. So I do think that we're going to probably see some rise, and then these other guys come in and kind of fill the gap. So it's like, all right, well, I did Brisbane in when's that, March, April this year. I don't want to travel, but I want to have a go at something else. And they might be able to then do one of these smaller events on the scale that's going to support them on the way. That I think you'll see the rise of that, and then we'll probably see it start to trickle in, I reckon, 3-4 years. So here to stay for now. I think the hybrid training itself is going to be here to stay for a long time, but I think the actual HYROX, unless there's some evolution, I do think that that's going to become the ultimate limiter of how many times do you want to do the exact same race again and again, just to try to squeeze half a minute off that. because no matter where you go to, it's the same thing. Versus if you do Sydney Marathon, Melbourne Marathon's different. Like it's the same distance, but the course is different. You're seeing new things. Like I do think that's going to become a limiter for them. So what's your verdict, mate? Here to stay?
I'd say, I think HYROX is here to stay. I'd say next 5 years, I think they will innovate somewhere. I do. I don't know whether that is the transition into a sport, and that's what the innovation is, and it does stay the same, but then it elevating, I guess, within its status within sports is where the uptake comes from, and then more of the general public will see it, and then
They did actually have an outdoor event in New York, which is an interesting thing. Like, so, because the whole thing's been indoor, they had it was underneath it was kind of like riverside sort of thing, and they had all the rest of the events were underneath a cover, but then the run was out in a loop outside.
They'll do a swim version. So that can be the innovation. It'll be a K-swim in between instead.
Yeah, I do think I wouldn't be surprised to see them have like different formats, but then there'd be one consistent, like this is the elite, like world champs, etc.
Yeah.
Like where they might bring in like, all right, cool, we're going to change the farmer's carry to this for this season, or these races are going to be like longer, shorter, something like that, where there's you've got something else that you can hone into. That would be my prediction of where they do innovate in the next few years. Don't think they're bringing in a barbell anytime soon, and I don't think they're going to be making things too heavy, which I'd love to see, because I'd love to slow down some of those runners, because that seemed to be our biggest issue of our stats from the pro doubles was
be better this year.
we were very good on the stations, and we were not so good on the running. Let's go number 3, fitness wearables. So Whoop, Garmin, Oura Ring, all these things, and just data around your fitness and wellness in general seem to be something that's been having its rise over the last few years, and it's probably been around for a long time. Like I remember back at uni, we were doing stuff on heart rate variability, and then they've just become way more mainstream and accessible. That's been really valuable. Like HRV you used to get a pretty terrible reading on it unless it was on a chest strap. Now you can get a pretty good reading from your wristwatch every morning, so you don't have to worry about, I better put in, I remember when I was talking to one of the guys who was in the night system, and they were encouraging all their guys that they had to sleep in the heart rate monitors. And it's like, that would have been a massive pain in the ass to then be like, all right, cool, we're going to make everyone sleep in the heart rate monitors, bring it back. They had to then download them, get the data, the S&C and the sports science guys would then go through and just check and go like, oh, Nate's a little bit slow today, like his heart rate variability is a little bit off. We're going to have to just pull back his training loads. Very slow transition of the data and being able to use it. Now it's like you can get this straight on your wristwatch. It's going to upload straight to your phone in about a couple of minutes first thing in the morning. And then when you've got people that are managing it on a team load and stuff like that, it's just getting automated straight into their system. So it's a lot easier to use now. But what's your take? Why is it increasing?
I think just people's are more health conscious just in general. I think that's just where the population's headed. Like as our generation ages and comes into
the longevity
30s, 40s, longevity, and I think we're just a health conscious generation, and we're getting older, so we're becoming more health conscious because it's becoming more top of mind. So I think that's one. I think technology is increasing, and it's becoming more efficient. So therefore, the user is just at a point where it's quite user-friendly and easy, like you said. That too. And everyone wants to think they can create a 1%, whilst people are normally really poor at doing the foundations and the work that actually moves the needle. They do like to think they can have an edge or a 1% or whatever it is. I don't see them going anywhere purely from human behavior and not the device itself. I think as long as it's marketed well and people think it's important, and as we go to more into this longevity and health, which I think is a great thing, I think there'll always be a market for that, because people will want to know and they'll want to have a metrics they can focus on to say that I am healthier or whatever it is. Do I care what it says very much? No. But it depends on the outcome you're looking for. It'll depend on the individual, their pursuit, but I think the knowledge base of the consumer in our generation, it'll probably increase because people will want to know more. They're going to be more health conscious, and then depending on how it's marketed and verbalized to the public will probably just determine the uptake of it all.
Yeah, I do think there's some layers in where I think the accuracy's off at the moment. The data's there, but what do we do with it? It's not integrated into what should be next, if that makes sense. When you look at stuff I know when I've had Whoop for a period of time. I've got the Garmin now, and I'd wake up, look at the Whoop, and it's like, you're in the red zone today. It's like, you should take a day off for an easy day. And it's like, well, I've got my program that's to get me to this goal here. Like, I'm not going to skip out and not go and do it because I know that this is the right pathway to the goal there. And I feel like it's sort of maybe has made I don't know how you fix it, of like to connect it with, okay, here's what the training plan is. So I know that, yes, today is probably going to be red, but the next day is my recovery day that's planned. If I push that back a day, I might not necessarily come into the green where I'm good to go, but then that'll throw out the rest of the week. Then I'm going to go red again if I've got a heavy deadlift.
You also
day.
have you have everyday people though as well, Jake, that are trying to utilize a metric that is probably more appropriate for athletes at the moment. Like you said, like you can use auto regulation and you can make sure you can adapt it, except I'm a dad. Sarah took her team out last night for dinner. She come home late. There was a storm. The kids woke up. Like, my Garmin running off 4 hours sleep is not going to tell me to train, but I live in the real world and I'm going to have to go do what I can and auto-regulate to keep the rhythms and because I feel better within myself. So I think it's going to depend on the individual. I assume, like always, the data will get better, how it's utilized, the science in the wearable and how it can be integrated. That'll all get better as technology gets better. But I also think it's probably finding what are the relevant metrics and what's their meaning for the individual, not just as an overall blanket statement of like, if your HRV is here, then it means this. It'd be more so trying to make it appropriate for the everyday person and look at what are actually the numbers that are going to lead the decision making. I think that's why
Which is the intention with Whoop and stuff like that. Like they're taking in all those numbers. Like they're taking in the multitude of what they get from the data and then spitting it back out. So it's not just going just the HRV. Like that is what they are trying to do, but I just think they're not there yet of understanding. And I think it's trying to be too predictive, not like and sort of reactive to right now rather than acknowledging what the plan is. And I think that's going to be a gap of like, how do we integrate okay, if we've got our programs being created and we know like where the rest days are going to be, where we're expecting, like in reality, like if I'm training you for a goal, I want you to go into the red zone a couple of times a week because that's part of the adaptation process. It's part of creating the stimulus there. And I think that's where maybe we are missing the boat a little bit with it at the moment, where we're nearly driving our decisions because of it, not using it along with the plan to then drive decisions.
Yeah, Jake, you're probably the one to talk to about that because I've never actually looked into mine on what it says on that. I'll take a note. Like my mentality around it is, like you said, this is the plan, this is my life, that's going to affect how I show up to do that, and I'll just auto-regulate along the way, and I don't need a device to tell me anything. Yeah. In that point, whilst I still think they have value, I think probably your perception on it's better and more well-rounded because I know what it's going to say because I have 2 young kids in a business and all these things, and I train at stupid o'clock. Like I know it'll say that I'm under-recovered, and whilst that can encourage me to look at other recovery modalities and whatnot, but until you tell me that they're doing great, I probably just won't worry about it.
And that's the thing is like it's probably not going to say that you're doing great. So if you wait for it to tell you that you're good to train, you're probably going to train once or twice a week. And if you've got goals that you want to go towards, you're probably not going to get there. And I think that's the big gap there that we see at the moment, or at least that I've seen with the people that I have tracked pretty diligently. And we've done it with Annalise during the middle of strongman preps. Like we've tracked her data every single day and gone like, she probably wouldn't have trained at all if we waited for her to have a good day. But the competition's still on the competition day. Like if your HYROX day isn't changing. So if you're waiting for that to do that there, and like, geez, like even when we did some of the runs in the lead up to the marathon, Garmin's telling me, it's like, oh, you need like 5 days of rest now after that run. I'm like, I got to run again tomorrow. Like there's no option here. Like I got to run a full marathon here. If I wait till you tell me I'm right to go, I'm probably only going to get halfway until I'm finished. So I think that's a big gap. And I don't know, I think they're here to stay because I think they're really valuable, but I do think that there is a layer where we do need to be training our own intuition on it there, not waiting for it to tell us what the decisions are, using it to then get indications to follow up of like how you feel. So it's like, oh, how do I feel? What do I know that it's going to need to get to where the result that I want to go to, and what am I expecting? Like what's coming up in the future? Should I take into account what it's telling me today so I can make a smarter decision on how to get to the goal? And I think that's probably the big gap is I don't know whether we need to educate people more on how to make smart decisions based on that data rather than just looking at the data and going, oh, it's red, that's a recovery day now. So I can't see them going anywhere. I do think they're going to get better. I think we will probably start to then refine, as you said, like what's the metrics or what's the numbers or how does it actually influence your regular day, or what's some actions that we can do based off what it is to actually keep on training. So I think that's the big shift, is like, how do we get it to help us keep doing the thing, not using it as an excuse to not do the thing. Let's roll into number 4. And this is our last one in the general space of training wellness. And then the next one's kind of in the business or the business industry of fitness. So recovery wellness spaces. So like saunas, ice bars, massages, all of these sort of things. So like we've started to see over the last couple of years, like the rise of places like City Cave and these sort of bath houses, I believe some of them are called. And I'm curious on how the future of these ones look. Like, what do you think why is it attractive in the first place, and what do you think is going to happen?
I think this one is interesting, Jacob. Good one to finish on. I think it feeds into like a lot of human behavior and identity, I think is a big one. Like if people are doing their marathon runs, then they get their like shot for Instagram with the boots on or whatever they are. But anyone that...
Can we just throw them in the bin already, the Normatec boots?
Anyone
not
that like... This is where it's hard because it's not a logic-based thing. It's like a feeling and it's an identity-based thing, and you hope that it works. I put it into a category very similar to like supplements, where it seems easy. Like you get to sit down, you get to increase your recovery, so therefore you'll be a better athlete or you'll feel better or whatever it is, or it can be a nice gift for someone. So it's hard to say because whilst it's never going to fix a shitty program, because how you control and manage your fatigue is through the programming and when fatigue's appropriate and how much fatigue, and you know that. But so the science side of me says it's not staying around for very long. Like it'll shrink, except then the human behavior consumer, if we look at supplements, like whilst there's some effective ones, most of it's bullshit and it's still here and it's one of the biggest industries that there is, multi-billion-dollar industry. So I think people will continue to do it. I can't see them from a business perspective. I can't see them sustaining the footprint from like a rent side of things unless they have continual uptake. So I see them coming into gyms and other facilities to share locations, to have a smaller footprint to reduce outgoings, but they won't go anywhere. I just think the model will change a little bit because whilst, I don't even know, I assume, I know ice bars are expensive for the ones that actually do the filtration and the temperature regulation. Saunas are pretty cheap. I don't even know how much those boots cost, but there's an upfront cost, so there'd be an ongoing cost to do that and power, and then obviously the footprint itself. Staffing's not huge, but I can't see them doing the numbers they need to do to sustain it ongoing with where I think it'll fall.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think they're probably overhyped anyway, like the ice bars for recovery.
Does it remind, sorry to interrupt, does it remind you of supplements?
Yeah, it's very...
It reminds me a lot of supplements, and just for people in the know, they know it's bullshit. It's so much of it's bullshit. But then for people not in the know, it sounds so good and it feeds this psychology of it's easy and it works, so I'm going to do that. Yeah,
and I do, there's a layer for it. Obviously, you see guys like Huberman talking about, and Huberman's gone a little bit...
he's sold his soul.
He's gone a little bit wild lately, but this is some of his early stuff that he was coming out with, and a lot of the pieces of where the saunas, the hot and cold therapy, these sort of stuff was valuable wasn't in training recovery. It was in wellness, the stimulation of heat shock, cold shock proteins, that they will benefit your life in a general sense, how you feel and so on. It's not going to actually change how you recovered from that big run.
Yeah, it's 100%, Jay. I think it's knowledge as well, and I think it's important to highlight that, because it's the consumer, right? It's similar to supplements. So if I just go to someone that doesn't know much and I would say there's inflammation, then they assume inflammation is bad. But not all inflammation is bad. We train to cause an inflammation response. So to deaden that response is actually reducing the stimulus, with some point at time may be beneficial so we can repeat loads or whatever it is in the program. You want to know
the one place where it's got a benefit from? So we did this, this was a deep dive in uni that was kind of there was a lecture and a series on recovery methods. And basically what it came back to was none of it works. But the one caveat, and this is the benefit of like my main teacher when I was going through uni, Ben, he'd been in the depths of sports science. He's actually worked with athletes in the real world, as opposed to a lot of people were just, here's the research, I read this, I'm teaching it now. It's changing a lot now, and we're pretty fortunate we do get to work with quite a few people and know a few people in the landscape that have been in the actual real world scenario with it there. And when you talk to them, it's a layer of like, okay, cool, we've got guys that have to go and do repeat efforts over a weekend. Like there's a knockout tournament or something like that there we go into nationals and you've got 5 games of OzTag on the weekend. Then it's beneficial to jump straight in there because you don't want your body starting that recovery process yet. If you start that recovery process, your body's neurological outputs are going to be down because they're not ready for it. You want to then, those games in between, you want to then stop that there for the day so you can get through your 2 or 3 games in the day, then start the recovery process, refuel, do all those sort of things so you can be good to go for the next day. Afterwards, you want to just get back into the actual recovery mode, so it's not necessarily helpful for you in the singular bouts, like when you're training for it, building towards a result, or just say after an individual game. But if you do have to back up in a couple of days, so you'd see the guys like, we look at Origin, those guys play on Wednesday. Some of those guys are playing again on Friday. Probably a good move there for them. If they are going to be backing up pretty short turnaround, they might do it there. Even there, I'd probably argue that they're probably just better off getting into hydration, nutrition, sleep practices as the best things they could possibly do, but you could make an argument for it. So it's typically where it's when you're looking to go again and again. Say we spoke about Nick Bear, BPN, they go one more ultra where they're just like, they're doing 10Ks and then they're going again on the hour. Like you could make an argument maybe they might jump into a ice bath there for a minute or so in between just to stop themselves from getting completely into that recovery state. So I think that's...
Yeah, but it sounds good though, right, for the consumer to reduce inflammation and saunas and whatnot. Like there's a lot of the like obviously it's pain focused with the marketing, but it echoes supplements. And I think from the consumer perspective, it's easy, but yeah, I think it's an interesting one to circle back to the point. Like, is it here to stay? I think it is because I think people want a quick fix. And I think in the history of human behavior and psychology, that's always been there. And I don't think that's going to go anywhere. But I don't think it'll be as big.
I don't think they're going to be financially viable. That's the big thing. Like, I went to one of the recovery centres. I had a couple of vouchers that I got from people, which was really lovely. And I banked them both up back to back for a float and a sauna. So I was there for 2 hours and there was 2 staff members there. It was at a place that wouldn't be cheap rent-wise or anything like that, like, you know, in town. And I was there for 2 hours and I reckon I saw one other person that wasn't a staff member.
Yeah.
That's pretty quickly, and I didn't pay. It was vouchers from two years ago. So in that way they made zero revenue. Maybe they made a revenue from like the other person that went into a sauna. But like $50 in the 2 hours there, like you're paying more of the staff. So in those ways there, like I can't see it being financially viable unless it is tacked into it's part of the gym facilities or those sort of ways there where it's tied in. Maybe it's part of a beauty parlor or something like that and they have that sort of realm there. I do see there is guys over in the States that are kind of like using it as community building, that I think that is where it could have its biggest impact of like, all right, well, we talked before off air, like there's less people are drinking now. More people are engaging in fitness as well. What do you do after your training session for the day or on your rest days? Like how are you getting together and connecting on those ones there? Like that might be, all right, we're going and doing a sauna and we've got the 10-person sauna and we're going to hang out and shoot the shit in the sauna for an hour instead of going and doing another workout. So I could see that being a viable option. And I have heard of people doing like the sauna and sip as their like Friday night events and stuff like that. And I could see that being a way that they stay as a recurring piece of what's part of a fitness approach for people, but I don't see it being a standalone, like here is a business that's just operating on these.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it'll stick, like ice baths, saunas and whatnot will stick for the consumer, but probably more so for personal use, where it's emotional, psychological response, and like...
Yeah, my dad loves his. He's he's in there every afternoon.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love like how I feel after an ice bath and do that, but I do not do it for anything training related. It's purely psychological, emotional, and just sometimes doing that hard thing. So I think it'll stay there, but I don't think people are going to go to these facilities, like multi-million-dollar facilities. And like you said...
I'm not spending $50 to go and sit in a sauna for half an hour. Or for an hour or so. Like
it's
really.
Also just like when you like, there's probably a lot of people listening to this that just haven't ran a business before, which is totally fine and fair. But when you start to actually look at the numbers that underlie a business for it to function, like for that to actually start to break even and make some money, it's going to have a lot of people through there. I think the everyday person, to no fault of their own, just because they haven't been in the absolute depths of hell of business, they look at it and they're like, oh, I can't believe you'd pay $100 for this thing, or you pay this for this thing. And then you look at it and you go, okay, their rent's probably $200,000 a year. All the things that's there as well. We've got to just take GST off what you're paying anyway. So if you're paying $100 for something, you're actually like, there's 90. And all the other costs. And it's like the volume, unless I'm missing something, the volume they would need is just so high. And that also comes back to the death of CrossFit. From a full segue all the way back around, like it's just...
Let's dive into the last piece here, because I think we've covered this, but we are leading straight into our last one. So the trend that we've seen in the last 12 months is the rise of like the franchised, like even both boutique studios and then also like commercial gyms, again, like where we're starting to see the big players are starting to have more market share, rather than like it was probably 5-10 years ago, it was like most places were independents. Like there wasn't as much of, like there was F45, but that was pretty much the only like boutique small group training space. Now you're seeing Fit Stops, The Yards, BFTs, Revels, 98s, like all of these ones starting to come up. And then the same thing, you're seeing that in Pilates, you're seeing that in across like every vertical in the fitness range, like City Cave in the recovery, and then other places like that are... What do you feel like? I can see why it's attractive for like why it's happening. Is like, but then what do you feel like is the future for that? There is that going to be rising? Are we going to see more of a shift back to independence?
It's really that is a really good question, Jacob. I think there's definitely a gap in my knowledge base on the franchising model, but I think it takes a lot of locations for it to be financially viable for the franchisor. But they're doing better. Like they are. Like F45 done a few things well, but it's nothing like it is now. Like you said, it's more science-backed. They're trying to have quality and trust as like the foundations they're built upon, which is admirable. But I think for more and more people, that I don't know if there's enough room within the nation to have multiple succeeding. I'm not quite sure. Like, and the thing that we hear a lot from other business owners that do come into the franchises, sometimes because the founder or the board, they need to get to 100 to 150 to start making money or something like that. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just the truth around it. The volume must be high with the model. So I think what happens is a very passionate owner-operator comes in, and it's just pretty much you get this blueprint and go for it. So I think we'll see them go under because they just don't have the support and the skills there to run a successful business, and then realize that it is quite hard. Like there's a reason that gyms are the second most failed business that there is that opened. One, low barrier to entry, I understand that, but two, it actually just is hard to make them financially viable. So I think there will be a shrink in how many different franchises, but I don't think it'll go anywhere. Like, I think the commercial gyms will stay. I think there'll just be someone that dominates the market, like not one individual, probably two or three that'll dominate the market, but then they generally will go with trends and they'll fade out and something will come back in there. So I think they're here to stay, but I think what we'll see and what we're seeing is they pop up, but they also disappear quite fast. But it's dependent on who the person owning and operating that location is. And I think they'd probably be able to do the same job on their own, except it's just fast-tracked that result backed off the brand and the systems and whatnot.
Yeah, and I do think it probably, like from us sitting in the seats of like seeing the amount of work that does come in that you don't have covered for you because of the fact that you're not coming through like from the franchise network. From our end, like I can see why it's attractive as for the other people. It's like, yeah, you might shave 10% of revenue off there, but then if that's covered by the lead flow because the franchise is attractive,
90% of headaches
and successful, and then like little things like we've been dealing with our website with some stuff at the moment in the background, and it's probably taken up more of my time than it's worth. but it needs to be done. So I can see like then the beauty of like for say one of the franchises around, if you own the franchise, you don't have to worry about the website. The franchise worries about the website. If you don't want to run your own marketing, you can then pay from headquarters to run your marketing for you. And obviously there's extra stuff there. I do think that we're going to see more of a rise of like we've already heard of 2 places this year already going that are shutting, and that's only now like in the Lake Macquarie area. I think there's going to be more of those that are going to be popping up, not necessarily this year, but I can see there being more of the market being enveloped by brands as opposed to singular studios. And yeah, I can see both sides of it, but the big key thing is obviously the people that are running the individual place are wanting to make a change for their local community, and they're willing to go and do the extra miles on those things that matter. And even commercial gyms do seem to be they're starting to shift in that way there, where like obviously we've had the big dogs for a long time of like the Anytimes and so on, but there does seem to be these sort of boutique-y commercial gym sort of setups starting to pop up. Like World Gym is kind of, they've been around for a while now, but they're starting to like go towards that like more trendy look. Like I think Anytime has evolved their model to being bigger to sort of combat against the World Gyms and so on. And I think that we're probably going to start to see like, what's that, Derrimut that was mainly Victoria based. I think it's just gone into voluntary administration actually. So there's going to be some of these players that are going to like.
Is that the one that's?
It was popped up on the block with Adrian.
Yeah, I'd be interested to actually know what's going on there. But anyway,
so I do think we're probably going to see a rise in these like franchise-esque ones because of all the hats that gym owners do have to wear in a day, and if they can have some of that streamlined by the systems and so on that come with a franchise, then I think they're going to go, all right, well, this is probably a better option for me. Even though the setup costs are probably a lot more, maybe they'd make an argument for like the headache's going to be less.
Yeah. And then also the shorter runway to profitability. So it's like you feed the cash up front to make the cash quicker.
We hear quite a lot of like some of these really successful launches from in the franchise, and they're like 200 members on day one. Like it took us 8 years.
Yeah.
So I do think they're here to stay. I do think there's always going to be the opportunity for like the pushback from like the littler guys then going like, all right, well we care about you guys. This like we've designed this for us. It's not, and we've talked about this on with Lily on the podcast and so on. Like I'm very very big on like the programming has to come from the people running the show because they actually know the members. And I think that's going to be one of the big plays of like the smaller gyms really pushing towards it, going, oh, well, I'm making this for you because I know you versus I'm not getting it from some random bloke down the road or in head office. So I do think that's going to be like an angle that you're going to see the individual gyms and the independents push towards. But I think that we're going to see franchises taking up more and more of the market space in the next 12 months. We're going to finish on a couple of quick predictions of what we do think is coming for 2026, and then we're going to wrap this one up because we've already gone a little bit long. So what else besides what we've talked about here from our 2025 predictions, Nath, what else do you see coming on board in 2026 that's new or shifting?
I think like we touched on before with the Pilates, I think that'll just shift to being more complementary because then they'll realise like with the adaptations that we're looking for, and I think it's valuable, but it just doesn't have that progressive loading that we need to see bone density increase.
Have you seen Strong have started like having these like attachments to their Pilates beds to try to have strength-based workouts and stuff as well?
No.
So they can do like deadlifts in there, like they click into the bands and stuff?
No, I'm not. That essentially, like there needs to be some kind of pathway. So whether it is that, and if that is a thing, then that's awesome. But it's
I still don't think it's going to be the same level as just getting under a bar, but it showcases that they're identifying that's a gap for them.
Yeah, that'll be a gap. So it'll either be complementary and they'll do it parallel to their strength training and whatnot. If they're looking to go down that path where they're increasing bone density and they're still going to maintain their, I guess, capacity, muscle tissue, all those things. And I think that is trending for the right reason through the research and through media and whatnot. It's like very important for that target market. Like those women in there now in their 20s, mid-20s, early 30s, like give it a decade and they're going to be going to that point where it's like you can either strength train or you can lose muscle. Like, and they're your two options, and it's going to have to give them something more. Anyone knows anything about like stimulus recovery adaptation? Like the stimulus just won't be there unless they do innovate like that, which it sounds like they will. But new things for next year.
This year.
No, I got nothing. I don't think there's anything new going to pop up that I'm aware of anyway.
Yeah, I think we sort of hit it with I think particularly in the female space, we're going to see that like strength training for perimenopause, range, and like really promoting that there. I do think the nutrition space is an interesting one at the moment. I think we've seen like this angling towards like the animal-based foods, which obviously there's the extremist side of it there, but then I think like that's probably just highlighting the importance of protein has been the thing that's come out of that there. And I think we're starting to see these labeling. Have you heard of fiber maxing? No, obviously not.
No, but it sounds familiar, and I don't know why. So maybe it's popped up and I just haven't taken notice.
In essence, it's just like encouraging people to eat more fiber because everybody's below fiber, but it's recommending on kind of just slightly above the range of what's the RDAs. But I feel like we're going to get to this point, or we are starting to get to this point where we're labeling just healthy eating with something to make it attractive for people to do. And then it's like kind of like the 75 hard is a pretty good example. Like obviously 75 hard's on the extreme level, but then you've got people that are starting to go like, oh, I'm going to do 75 medium or 75 soft. And it's like, that's just called healthy living. But we need to put a label on it. I've got to do it for 75 days to make it like into something that's worthwhile doing. And I do think that's probably going to continue to be trending in some ways of like putting wrappers around stuff that you should just do anyway to make it into something that's like worth your time, or to like put a trend around it. Like the fiber maxing, 75 soft and those sort of things. Like I heard one of the girls at Max's daycare being like, oh, I'm doing 75 soft at the moment. I'm like, so you're training like 3 times a week and just eating kind of whatever you want, like just trying to eat a little bit better and so on. I was like, that's what most people just do when they decide that they want to get into exercise. Like I'll just train a couple of days a week. I just won't, I'll try to eat better, like without any sort of need to actually get the job done and get over the line. So I think we're going to see these wrappers like where we're putting more things into labels to make them attractive.
Instead it gamifies a little bit too.
And then the only other things, like as we sort of touched on, I think we're going to see more of the franchises sort of push into things. I think you're seeing that they're starting to align with, or just the fitness consumers starting to align with things like HYROX and so on. So there is purpose in front of them. There is something they're going towards. And I do think that's a really good piece as well, because like you look at like, we used to always have, when we were playing footy, you had a grand final, like that you wanted to make. You wanted to make it semis, and if you made it semis, you wanted to make it the grand final. If you made it grand final, you wanted to win. Like there was always sort of a purpose at the end of it there, versus it gets hard training for life of like, I'm just training to be feeling my best in my day-to-day. Like, it's like, when's that going to stop? It's like, hopefully a long time away down the road. So it's very, very difficult to then have that I think that having those little mini goals where you can then put it together and go, all right, we're working towards here. So I do think there's going to be things like that we're going to start to see more and more people shift in alignment to. And I think that fits into the way of like the hybrid training as a thing right now. Like running marathons and so on have been having a lot of success in the recent future. I would like to see a shift towards a bit more on the strength and power side on that hybrid world. I think the hybrid lane is here to stay, but I would like to see us push more towards those like, not necessarily, I'm not expecting people to do 500-pound deadlift and 5-minute miles, but that sort of lane, whereas like we're not necessarily pushing past the hour for the whole, like everyone's always training for that. I'd like to see a bit of shift towards the short side of stuff, but I think that's my bias of I'd much rather run a hard mile and lay on the ground and pull a heavy deadlift or do a heavy squat than an hour long HYROX.
I think the distance is attractive because it's not so much like physical capacity has to be there, yes, but it's more mentality. Like I could train forever and I might hit a 500-pound deadlift, but I could just keep putting my next foot in front of the other foot and I could do a marathon. Like I think that's where
Claire's saying anyone can
put down their handbag, which I did. I chucked it down and I'd done it, Claire. So I think that's where the distance becomes a belief builder. I actually had an email about this today. And it's just like the reps by reps by reps, where it's like the training intensity and volume I think I'd have to do to hit 230 on a deadlift.
So you're saying people are looking for the easy way out?
No, it's not the easy way out. It's funner because it's just progressive and it's just that next step where it's like we could train, and you know this, we could train a whole year to put 2 kilos on a max. Where when you get into that, I guess the more pinnacle of running, it might be that. But it's also, you could just not stop for another kilometre. And you can just keep going. But you can't just add kilos on the bar forever. But you could just do more distance. So I think it's attractive in that sense because it's an easy, easy is not the right word. It's a simpler metric if you're just willing to suffer. Where the objective measure of strength can't always just go up because then you'd eventually, you'd break a world record in a year if you put 5 kilos on every X amount of time.
Yeah.
So I think there's that there. But that'll do us. We spoke about this for too long.
Yes. That'll wrap us up, guys. That's it for our trends and predictions for 2025, 2026 episode. We will see you guys back at it again next week.